Hey, topic for discussion today. Have you ever hosted a biker party? I know a lot of you's probably hosted a party from one time to the other, whether it's family or friends. Uh, a couple beers with your brother-in-law, or the wife breaks out a couple bottles of wine or something like that. That ain't what I'm talking about. Have you ever hosted a real biker party? I have, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. Before I built this house, I used to have a house in the city in Akron, Ohio, and it was right in the city. 2-story house with a basement, shared the driveway with the house next door. I mean, it was tight. The houses were just bam, bam, bam right down the street. I hated city living. But while I was there, I hosted a few parties. In fact, every year I would host a big party. We'd call it Party Town, and they'd throw out flyers, and we'd fill the house. I mean, there would be standing room only. There'd be food in the kitchen. There'd be beer in the refrigerator, and it was a BYOB, bring your own beer thing. And it was a lot of fun. It never got real rowdy or anything, just a bunch of people all getting together and having a good time. Now, after I bought my house out here in the country, I decided it was time to have some real big parties. And in the club that I was a part of, we would kind of share parties. So a couple times a month, somebody would host a party at their house. And when you did that, it was kind of a potluck, bring something to eat, and bring your own beer. But just gather together for an afternoon and evening of just getting the buzz on and enjoying life. It's a hot one today. It's probably in the 90s, so summer's finally here in Ohio. And it made me remember some of the parties that we used to have here. The guys would show up with their wives, and of course the wives would all gather in the kitchen and have their little drinks going on there and whatever. There'd be food if you were hungry, and the guys would gather out around the campfire area. And generally the way it was, those bikers, they would we'd party late. It would be 2, 3 in the morning and still be going. So nobody would ride home at that point. When it came to that time of day, or morning, I guess, everybody would just crash wherever they could. Some would lay on the living room floor, some on the couches up in the loft and whatever. And you'd wake up in the morning whenever you could crawl out of bed, 10, 11 a.m., noon maybe, and the rest of them would all start stirring, and they'd all want breakfast. So you'd have to start cooking up eggs, bacon, sausage, throwing toast in the toaster as fast as you could pump it out, get the griddle out and start throwing some pancakes on there, because it was good to get some food in your belly after you had been partying all night long. And like I said, we would rotate. Sometimes we would have it here at this log home, or sometimes we'd have it at somebody else's. But generally you'd spend the night, and then you'd be prepared to serve breakfast, or whoever was hosting it would serve breakfast in the morning. And then it was probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon before everybody finally packed up and left and went home. And some of them would still be there into the following evening. So it could be a weekend party for all that mattered. It's just whenever anybody wanted to leave, because when you're in a club like that, you're all brothers. It's brotherhood, and it doesn't matter. They're your friends. That's what you do. Well, I had one big party here one year. It was a huge one, and we had set up ahead of time to have a band come in, and we were going to have the band play in the backyard here. Well, they said they needed a covered porch or something. They wouldn't perform just out in the weather in case it rained or something. They didn't want their equipment to get damaged. So right around this area here, we built a stage. We put some 4x4s down and screwed some sheets of 3/4 inch plywood on top of that. And then a buddy of mine came and he brought one of those white carport tents. You put together the pipes and then you put the top on it. So we had this big stage set up right here that was facing this way, and they were able to put floodlights up in the pipe frame, and it was a nice little stage. And then we just ran power from the house over to the stage. So we had that set up ahead of time, and the band members came out and looked at it and gave us their approval. And then I always set up this thing back here. I call it the lean-to. It's in pretty sad shape right now. It still works for what it was intended to do, but you know, it's kind of failing up here and back there. The chair's up on the table so we can mow and don't have to mow around it. But when we have a campfire, the chair comes down to the fire pit here. And then I also had I still have it, a great big canvas truck tarp that covers this whole thing. And it pins down on the ground on each side. It would come all the way down and tack into the ground here, out on the back. So it would hold quite a few people in inclement weather. You could go inside this thing and it could be raining or whatever, and you'd still have the warmth from the fire coming in. We have a bonfire there, and I used to have a big stack of wood here to keep feeding the fire. As you can see, it doesn't get used anymore, but that was like an entertainment center. These things were brackets for tiki torches that fit in there. You know, we have a tiki torch burning on each end, so it was pretty cool out here by the fire. Of course, we had the pond in the back. It was real nice. And then up here by the house, we set up some tables. Over here where the spruce tree is, we had tables lined up, and we had food, you know, like crock pots with sloppy joe or pulled pork, potato salad, potato chips, all kinds of stuff. I mean, you wouldn't go hungry. There was plenty of food. And then we had a keg. They had the kegs over here too, and one of the guys had this ingenious little invention. You may have seen one of these before, where you take like an igloo cooler, and inside the cooler is copper that goes around the inside of the cooler and then comes out, and there's a tap right on the side of the cooler. You could pour a couple bags of ice in there, and then as you tap the keg, the warm beer would come up and go through those copper tubes, and it would come out the tap ice cold. So you could serve a warm keg, and ice cold beer would come out of there just from running through that copper tubing inside that cooler. That was pretty clever. So we had this big party here, and we had, of course, over here but where the herb garden was all solid motorcycles over here. And then the cars were just lined up along the sides of the driveway and everywhere they could squeeze in. And we had campers in the back that set tents up back behind the pond, and they could spend the night there too. So it was a big party. We had, you know, a couple hundred people show up, and the band was playing here in the backyard, and the music was good. They were kind of a country rock band. They did kind of a mix of country music and rock music, and it was very entertaining. People were dancing. They let people get up there and sing, you know, karaoke style. So it was a lot of fun, and they played till like 2 a.m. something like that. before they decided to wrap it up and put their equipment away. But that worked pretty good. Now, the worst thing about all of this was that when the party's over, again, you wake up the next morning and there's people all over the place, you know. There were guys that were sleeping up here on the back deck. They were sleeping in the house. They were sleeping on the floor. They were sleeping upstairs in the loft. We had extra bedrooms they were sleeping in. And I suppose, well, some of them were camped back here in their tents. So we still had people here in the morning, and a lot of them just packed up and left, but some of them hung around. There was a couple bikers that went over there skinny dipping and just jumped in the pond to rinse the stink off. And then we're traipsing around the yard butt naked. Sight to see, I'm telling you. See a big old beer belly, hairy, old, long-haired biker walking around your backyard, butt naked, without a care in the world. That's the way it went, though, you know. It was just whatever you wanted to do. There was no rules. Again, we'd have to serve breakfast for everybody, and once we got everybody out of here, I had a mess to clean up. Of course, I had to take the whole stage down, disassemble it, take the tent down, haul it back to my buddies, pick up all the plywood, the 4x4s that were on the ground for the frame, put all that away, and then the tarp over the lean-to had to be taken down, folded up, and put away. We didn't leave it out there. You know, those are expensive, and you don't want them to just sit out there and rot in the weather. Only used it for parties, so that came down. And then there were beer cans everywhere. You know, people would throw beer cans in the woods. Paper plates. There was a package of hot dogs and buns left on the picnic table where somebody had been cooking them over the fire. There was just trash everywhere. There was trash out in the driveway, all the way down the driveway where the cars were parked. You know, people just threw their beer can out in the grass there and left, so they wouldn't have an open container in their car. So I was walking around here with a trash bag for hours, just cleaning up trash. Inside the house, a different story. Of course, your toilet, pee all over the floor and everything from drunks peeing in there all night. Even barf. Cigarette burn on the kitchen counter. Cigarette burn on the bathroom floor. Stains on the carpet where somebody had slept. I don't know if they barfed or something and just left it there. But inside the house was a wreck too. Of course, the kitchen all covered with sticky from people mixing drinks in there and spilling it on the floor and people tracking in and out. So it was a mess, and it probably took us all of the next day too to get everything cleaned back up again. I think that was probably one of the last parties I ever had after that, because I just said, no more, can't do this. I mean, you guys tore my place up, and I'm done with that picture. So in the meantime, though, you know, I've always said everything I have here I'm very, 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 very fortunate to have, and I feel blessed. I feel like this was God's gift to me for all my years of hard work. I spent my life working for the park system, so of course everything here looks like a park. That's just the way I was brought up. My dad had a very immaculate yard, and he liked to keep things neat, so he instilled those things in me over the years. I built the house with the help of my dad and some friends, and so, you know, I take a lot of pride in that. And I give God the glory for it, because he gave me the strength. He gave me the wisdom to know how to do all this stuff and the know-how. So I'm very blessed, and I don't want to abuse it in ways that I shouldn't. So no more big parties here. That's done. If you guys have ever had a big party, let me know. Leave comments down below. Like to hear about them. And maybe you've got some good stories. You guys got some good stories, some of you guys. I love reading the comments. They're awesome. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that red subscriber button and get hooked up for future videos. We will keep you entertained the best we can. Alright guys, that's all I got for today. In the meantime, I hope you will ride hard and die free.